The Grand Conclave chamber hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of Zapirian power cores, the obsidian walls absorbing the sound until it became a physical pressure against the skin. Holographic banners of conquered species flickered in the air, their sigils twisting as if in pain. The Cricks with their crystalline cities, the Tavari with their floating forests, all now reduced to client states under the Dominion's rule. The air smelled of ozone and something metallic, the scent of dominance. Admiral Vex stood at the center of the raised platform, his biomechanical armor shifting like liquid over his segmented carapace. His voice, when he spoke, was the sound of grinding metal. This is what the humans offer. He gestured to the holographic schematics floating above the council table, his mandibles twitching in amusement. Pathetic. The other Zapirian warlords chuckled, their armored limbs clicking in unison. Around them, the ambassadors of client species murmured, some in relief. Glad it wasn't their turn to be mocked. Others in quiet scorn. Captain Elias Carter stood alone on the lower platform, his black uniform stark against the sea of alien forms. He was the only human in the chamber, the only one without an exoskeleton or chitin plating, the only one with just 2 arms and 2 eyes. He kept his expression neutral, but his fingers twitched at his sides. Vorac Ambassador Droth loomed over him, his scaled bulk casting a shadow across Carter's face. "Tell me, softkin," Droth rumbled, his breath hot with the stench of rotting meat. "Do your people truly believe these toys will protect you when the swarm comes?" He tapped one claw against the hologram, distorting the image of Earth's dreadnoughts. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. You will be devoured." Carter didn't flinch. "Our fleet may not match yours in size, Ambassador, but we've survived worse than the Vorac." A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. The Crick's ambassador, a slender being with faceted eyes, trilled in their native tongue before translating. "Survived your species has never faced a true interstellar war. The swarm will crush you like insects." Vex raised a clawed hand, silencing the room. "Enough." He stepped down from the platform, his armored feet clicking against the polished floor. "Captain Carter, your people petitioned for inclusion in the Dominion's defense pact. But look at what you bring." He gestured again to the hologram, where Earth's dreadnoughts spun slowly, their designs decades behind even the most outdated Zapirian warships. "Your railguns, we abandoned those centuries ago. Your shielding, a joke. The Vorac will tear through it like paper." Carter's jaw tightened. "Technology isn't the only measure of strength. Spare us your bravado," Vex snapped. "The swarm doesn't care about your spirit. They care only for biomass, and your world is ripe for harvesting." Droth leaned in, his voice a whisper meant to carry. "Perhaps we should let the humans face the swarm alone. See how long their courage lasts when their cities burn." The chamber erupted in agreement, a chorus of clicks and growls and hisses. Carter stood motionless, his eyes locked on Vex. Then, from the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a new voice spoke, soft but cutting through the noise like a blade. "Admiral." All eyes turned to Professor Zell, the Octavian scholar whose tentacles glided effortlessly over the floor as she approached. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "You dismissed them too quickly." Vex's armor plates flared in irritation. "You defend these primitives." Zell's many eyes blinked in sequence. "I defend wisdom. The humans have survived on a death world. Their history is written in blood and adaptation. Underestimating them would be unwise," Droth snorted. "Spoken like a scholar who has never seen war." Zell didn't rise to the bait. She simply turned to Carter. "Captain, your people have a saying, do they not? Appear weak when you are strong." Carter's lips curled, just slightly, something like that. Vex's mandibles twitched again, this time in annoyance. "Enough games. The Conclave has spoken. Humanity is unfit for the coming war. Your petition is denied." He turned away, his armor hissing as it sealed. "When the swarm comes, pray we have time to save your world before it is too late." The chamber erupted in final laughter, the sound echoing off the walls as the holograms flickered out. Carter stood alone for a moment longer, then turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps silent against the floor. Behind him, Zell watched him go, her tentacles coiled tight. She knew what he wasn't saying, and she feared it. The red sands of Mars swirled outside the reinforced viewport as Dr. Lisa Hayes wiped grease from her hands. Her lab coat was more stain than fabric at this point. The sleeves rolled up to reveal arms crisscrossed with fresh burns from yesterday's reactor calibration. The facility beneath Olympus Mons had been her home for 3 years, though home was a generous term for the maze of flickering lights and leaking pipes. General Marcus Cole's boots echoed through the cavernous hangar bay before she saw him. The old soldier moved like a man who'd left pieces of himself on too many battlefields, his cybernetic leg whirring softly with each step. His scarred face was grim under the flickering work lights. "You're late," Hayes said without looking up from her datapad. The screen showed a cascade of errors in reactor core feed. "Had to shake another Zapirian spy," Cole grunted. He leaned against a workbench, making the scattered tools rattle. "Third one this month. They're getting bolder." Hayes finally looked up, pushing a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Let them look. They won't find anything." A smirk played at the corner of her mouth. "Not until we want them to." Cole didn't return the smile. "Sinclair's breathing down my neck. The Vorac just took the Calvari system. Zapirians are next, and you know what happens after that." His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on her. "Is it ready?" Hayes tossed the datapad onto the bench with a clatter. "Follow me." They descended through security checkpoint after checkpoint, Cole's authorization codes opening doors that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. The air grew colder, their breath fogging as they reached the final elevator. Hayes punched in a code that made the floor vibrate. "You're going to love this," she murmured as the doors opened. The hangar stretched farther than the eye could see, lit only by the eerie blue glow of stabilization fields. And there, cradled in the darkness like a sleeping beast, was the USN Retribution. Cole's breath caught. The Dreadnought's black hull absorbed the light around it, making the ship seem more like a hole in reality than a construct of metal. Even knowing the specs, seeing it in person was something else entirely. "Mother of God," he whispered. Hayes walked forward, her boots clicking against the catwalk. "Eclipse, class Dreadnought, 5 kilometers of pure spite." She gestured to the ship's smooth flanks. "Neutronium, reinforced adamantium hull. Cloaking system bends light and sensors around it. And these," she pointed to the massive cylindrical housings running along the spine. "Gravitic lances, rip spacetime itself apart at the quantum level." Cole stepped closer to the railing, his human eye wide. "You actually made it work." "Took 6 failed prototypes and 2 melted research stations," Hayes admitted. "But yeah, we made it work." She tapped her wristcom, and the Retribution's running lights flickered to life. Not the bright white of standard ships, but a deep crimson that pulsed like a heartbeat. A holographic display shimmered into existence between them, showing the ship's reactor core cycling up. Hayes's fingers danced across the controls. "Watch this." The Retribution vanished, not like standard cloaking. Where you might see a shimmer, 1 second it was there. The next empty hangar, Cole reached out, his hand passing through where the bow should have been. "I'll be damned. Even Zapirian quantum scanners won't pick it up," Hayes said proudly. "Complete sensor blackout, and the best part." She tapped another command. Space itself seemed to ripple as 12 more shadows appeared behind the Retribution. Smaller, but no less deadly. The rest of the Eclipse Fleet. Cole breathed. Hayes nodded. "Wezen, Defiance, Vengeance, Wrath." 12 ships total, built in pieces across hidden shipyards from Mercury to Pluto assembled here. She crossed her arms. "The Zapirians think our fleet's a joke. Let them laugh when these decloak over Zorath Prime. They'll be the last sounds those overgrown roaches ever make." Cole stared at the invisible armada, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he began to smile. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Sinclair needs to see this. Hayes shook her head. Not yet. Reactor calibrations at Faye. 1 more week. You don't have a week, Cole snapped. Vorac are. I know what the Vorac are doing, Hayes' shout echoed through the hangar. She took a breath, lowering her voice. 1 more week, or we risk the gravitic lances tearing the ships apart when they fire. Cole studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 7 days, not a second more. He turned to leave, then paused. Hayes, if this works, she finished his thought. The galaxy's going to learn why you don't underestimate humans. Above them, the Retribution's cloaking field flickered for just an instant, long enough to reveal the rows of missile silos lining its flanks, each one marked with a single word. Remember, Earth. The first warning came as a distortion in Zorath Prime's upper atmosphere, a ripple in the sky like heat haze over desert sands. Admiral Vex's command throne vibrated beneath him as the Dominion's orbital defense grid powered up, its plasma batteries humming to life. His armored fingers tightened around the throne's armrests, the biomechanical plating of his exoskeleton flexing. Report, Vex growled, his voice like grinding metal. A Zapirian sensor officer turned, his 4 eyes blinking in staggered sequence. Gravitational anomalies at the edge of the system overlord multiple contacts emerging from slip space. Vex's mandibles twitched. The humans? The officer hesitated. No, my lord. The signatures. They match Vorac bio-signatures. A hush fell over the command deck. The Vorac Swarm hadn't been seen in this sector for decades, not since they devoured the Kelthar homeworld. Then the sky split open. Organic warships poured through the rift, their chitinous hulls glistening with secreted acid. They moved like living things, their spined prows twisting as they oriented toward Zorath Prime. Each vessel pulsed with internal bioluminescence, their veins glowing a sickly green against the black of space. All fleets, battle stations. Vex barked, rising from his throne. Activate planetary shields, scramble every fighter we have. Alarms wailed across the capital as the Zapirian Defense Fleet mobilized. Hundreds of sleek, angular warships lifted from their docks, their plasma cannons charging with blue-white energy. The Dominion's pride, the Obsidian Maw, Vex's flagship, took position at the head of the formation, its forward batteries humming with pent-up destruction. Open fire, Vex commanded. A storm of plasma bolts streaked toward the Vorac armada. The first volley struck home, burning holes through the lead bioships. Acidic fluids vented into space, crystallizing instantly. The Zapirian crews cheered until the Vorac vessels kept coming, their wounds sealing shut before their eyes. What in the abyss? Vex muttered. Then the swarm returned fire. Tendrils of corrosive mucus erupted from the Vorac ships, splattering across Zapirian hulls. Metal screamed as it dissolved. Decks exposed to vacuum in seconds. Fighters caught in the spray melted mid-flight, their pilots' last screams cut short. Shields at Faye, a tactical officer shouted. Evasive maneuvers. Vex roared. The Obsidian Maw banked hard, but not fast enough. A glob of bioacid struck its starboard flank, eating through 3 decks before emergency bulkheads sealed the breach. The ship shuddered, its artificial gravity flickering. On the view screen, Vorac boarding pods slammed into a Zapirian cruiser. The pods burst open, disgorging chittering warriors, 8-limbed nightmares with serrated claws and translucent skin that showed their pulsing organs. They tore through the crew like harvesters through ripe grain. Overlord. The sensor officer's voice was shrill. The Hive. Commander's vessel is entering the battlefield. A monstrous shape eclipsed the stars. The Vorac command ship, Shith's Will, was 10 times the size of the Maw, its surface writhing with symbiotic weaponry, its central maw dilated, revealing a pulsating sac of bioplasma. Brace 4, the sac contracted. A stream of superheated organic matter spewed forth, striking a Zapirian battleship dead center. The vessel detonated in a flash of vaporized metal, its debris raining down on the capital below. Vex's carapace rattled with fury. All ships, concentrate fire on that beast. The Dominion fleet obeyed. A concentrated barrage of plasma lanced toward Shith's will, only for the energy to dissipate against a suddenly visible membrane of bioelectric energy. Adaptive shielding, the tactical officer whispered. They're learning our weapons' frequencies. A hologram flickered to life on the command deck. The image of Vorac Hive, Commander Shith, materialized, a towering, chitinous monstrosity with too many eyes, and a mouth that split vertically. His voice emerged as a wet gurgle, translated by the ship's systems. Zapirian flesh will feed our young, Shith hissed. Your worlds will become our nurseries. This is the will of the swarm. The transmission cut out as another Zapirian cruiser exploded, its wreckage crashing into the planetary shield. The impact sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, toppling spires in the capital below. Vex watched helplessly as his fleet died around him. The Obsidian Moor's bridge lights flickered, emergency power struggling to keep systems online. My lord, the tactical officer said quietly. We've lost the eastern orbital defenses. The swarm is beginning atmospheric descent. Vex's claws dug into his throne. He'd mocked the humans for their weakness, their outdated technology. Now his empire burned while Earth's envoy had warned them, had tried to tell them what was coming. A proximity alarm blared. Incoming bio-missiles. The Moor rocked as living projectiles slammed into its hull, their acidic payloads chewing through armor. The deck tilted violently, throwing crew members into consoles. Smoke filled the command deck. Overlord, we must retreat. An officer begged. Vex stared at the view screen, at the dying remnants of his fleet. The Vorac Swarm moved unchecked now, their tendrils reaching for his homeworld. Somewhere in the chaos, he thought he heard laughter, not from the Vorac, but from memory. Captain Carter's calm voice echoed in his mind. You'll need us before we need you. The Obsidian Moor's engines sputtered, failing. The ship listed, its systems dying one by one. Around them, Zorath Prime burned. The war room of Earth's orbital command buzzed with frantic energy. Screens flickered with live feeds from Zorath Prime, the Zapirian homeworld burning under the Vorac Swarm's assault. President Ava Sinclair stood at the central holotable, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge. The projections showed the last of the Dominion's fleet being torn apart by chitinous bio-ships, their plasma fire doing nothing against the swarm's adaptive armor. Admiral Jake Riker's cybernetic eye whirred as it zoomed in on the carnage. They're getting slaughtered, he muttered. Just like we predicted. Sinclair didn't look away from the screens. How long until the swarm turns its attention outward? Riker's jaw tightened. If they finish the Zapirians in the next 6 hours, they'll have clear lanes to the neighboring systems, including ours. A junior officer rushed forward, her face pale. Madam President, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Zapirian Conclave. It's Overlord Vex. Sinclair exchanged a glance with Riker before nodding. Put him through. The hologram flickered to life, revealing Vex's battered form, his mechanical armor was cracked, leaking dark fluid. The chamber behind him shook as explosions rumbled. Human leader, he rasped, his voice no longer the grinding metal arrogance of before. The Vorac. They cannot be stopped. Your species must flee while you still can. Riker crossed his arms. Funny, last we checked, you called our fleet pathetic scrap. Vex's mandibles twitched. A miscalculation, but pride means nothing now. The swarm consumes all. If you have any warships, any weapons, use them to escape. Sinclair leaned forward. We're not running, Overlord. Vex's compound eyes dimmed. Then you will die. The transmission cut out. The room fell silent. Riker turned to Sinclair. They're begging, that's new. Sinclair exhaled slowly. How many are ready? All 12 Eclipse class, Riker said. Retribution, defiance, vengeance. The whole fleet cloaked, armed, and waiting at the Mars rally point. A murmur spread through the command staff. Some had known about Project Eclipse. Most hadn't. Sinclair's gaze swept the room. We don't have time for debates. The Zapirians are arrogant, but they're not wrong about one thing. If the Vorac take Zorath Prime, they'll come for us next. She tapped a command into the holotable. A star map expanded, showing the slipstream routes between Sol and Zorath. Admiral Riker, recall Captain Carter from the diplomatic envoy. I want him on the Retribution's bridge within the hour. Riker nodded. And the fleet's orders? Sinclair's voice didn't waver. Full deployment, Operation Midnight is authorized. A stunned silence followed. Then the room erupted into motion. Officers scrambled to stations, relaying commands, activating long, dormant protocols. Alarms blared as Earth's orbital defenses shifted to high alert. Riker stayed at Sinclair's side. You realize what this means. Once we decloak, every species in the quadrant will know what we've built. Sinclair watched the feeds of dying Zapirian ships. Let them see. Deep beneath Mars-red sands, the USN Retribution powered up. Dr. Lisa Hayes stood in the cavernous hangar, her lab coat fluttering as the Dreadnoughts' engines hummed to life. The ship's black hull seemed to drink the light around it, a shadow-given form. General Marcus Cole approached, his boots crunching on the dusty rock. They gave the order. Hayes didn't look away from her creation. About damn time, Cole smirked. You sound like you've been waiting for this. She finally turned, a rare grin on her face. 12 years of hiding, of pretending we were just tinkering with outdated tech. You bet I've been waiting. A klaxon wailed across the facility. Massive bay doors groaned open, revealing the star-speckled void beyond. The Retribution's gravitic drives pulsed, ready to tear through space itself. Cole's comlink crackled. General, we've got Carter inbound. ETA 3 minutes. Hayes adjusted her goggles. Good, I want him to see this. Above them, the Retribution's cloak shimmered. Just for a second, as its systems cycled to full combat readiness. The other Eclipse class ships followed suit, their outlines flickering like ghosts against the black. Back on Earth, Riker watched the readiness reports flood in. All ships confirm green status, slipstream coordinates locked. Sinclair folded her hands behind her back. Then let's show the galaxy what humanity can really do. The holotable's projection shifted, zooming out to display the full Eclipse Fleet, 12 monstrous dreadnoughts, each a silent predator waiting to strike. Their gravitic lances hummed with barely restrained power. Riker tapped his earpiece. All captains, this is Admiral Riker. Operation Midnight is live, move out. One by one, the dreadnoughts' cloaks disengaged fully. Their black hulls gleamed under the distant sun as they turned toward the void. The last thing the Zapirians expected was salvation. The Vorac would learn to fear it. The void at the edge of the Zorath system was supposed to be empty. Vorac scouts had swept it clean. Their organic sensors tasted nothing but cosmic dust and the fading radiation of dying stars. Commander Shith flexed his chitinous claws, mandibles clicking in satisfaction as his swarm descended upon the last Zapirian defenses. The prey species' orbital platforms burned like torches in the night. Then space rippled. Shith's secondary eyes snapped toward the anomaly. His neural tendrils flared in alarm. Report, he hissed, his voice a wet gurgle through the swarm's psychic link. The Vorac sensor. Beasts writhed in their nutrient sacs, their bioluminescence flickering erratic red. Wrong. Their primitive minds screamed. Aboard the USN Retribution, Captain Elias Carter exhaled slowly. The bridge was silent except for the steady hum of the gravitic drive. His fingers hovered over the tactical display. All ships, he said, voice calm. Drop cloak. Space tore open. 12 black behemoths materialized like nightmares given form. The Eclipse-class dreadnoughts didn't reflect light. They consumed it. Their angular hulls drank in the glow of distant stars, leaving only silhouettes darker than the void itself. The Retribution led the formation, its prow bristling with the menacing barrels of gravitic lances. Ensign, Carter said. Open fleet-wide channel. The comm crackled. Channel active, sir. Carter leaned forward. This is Captain Carter to all Eclipse Fleet vessels. Weapons free. Fire at will. The Vorac Swarm recoiled. Bioships twisted in mid-flight, their fleshy hulls spasming as instinctive terror overrode hive commands. Shith's claws scraped against his command throne. "What are these?" he snarled. No one answered. The Retribution fired first. A gravitic lance wasn't like Zapirian plasma or Vorac acid. It didn't burn or melt. It unmade. The beam struck a Vorac hive, ship dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ship imploded, its organic armor crumpling like paper in a fist. The shockwave ripped through nearby vessels, tearing them apart from the inside. "Direct hit," shouted Lieutenant Cho from the weapons station. Carter allowed himself a grim smile. Again. Across the battlefield, the other dreadnoughts opened fire. The USN Defiance carved a swath through a cluster of Vorac carriers, their bloated bellies bursting like overripe fruit. The USN Vengeance unleashed a full broadside, its lances converging on a command ship, Shith's flagship. The Hive commander barely had time to scream. His throne room collapsed inward, the walls folding like wet clay. His last thought was of the black ships, their silhouettes blotting out the stars. On the Retribution's bridge, Dr. Lisa Hayes watched the carnage with clinical detachment. Gravitic lances performing at Fey efficiency, she noted. Vorac Bio, armor offers 0 resistance. General Cole, standing beside her, grunted. Told you we should have brought more. Below them, Zorath Prime's atmosphere burned with falling wreckage. The Zapirian survivors huddled in their broken warships, their sensors finally registering the impossible. Overlord Vex command ship was adrift, its engines dead. His remaining crew huddled at the viewports, their compound eyes wide. One of his lieutenants stammered, "Those are human ships." Vex's mandibles trembled. The schematics they'd mocked flashed in his mind, the crude, laughable designs Carter had presented. A ruse, all of it, Admiral. A sensor officer shrieked, "The lead vessel, it's hailing us." Vex hesitated. Then he straightened his cracked carapace. "Put it through." Carter's face appeared on the cracked view screen. He looked almost bored. "Overlord Vex, you wanted to see human technology in action." He gestured to the devastation beyond his ship. "Well, here it is." Vex's voice was hollow. You hid this from us." "Had to," Carter said. "Would be a surprise otherwise." The channel cut outside. The Eclipse Fleet advanced. The Vorac Swarm was breaking, their hive, mind shattered. Ships turned to flee, only to find more black silhouettes waiting in the dark. Hayes tapped her datapad, calculating remaining Vorac forces. Estimated time to total eradication, 17 minutes. Cole cracked his knuckles. "Let's make it 10. The Dreadnoughts fired again. The void above Zorath Prime trembled as the Eclipse Fleet opened fire. Admiral Riker's cybernetic eye flickered with targeting data as the USN Defiance's gravitic lances powered to full charge. "All ships fire at will," he growled into the comm. "Let's show these bugs what human engineering can do." Space itself seemed to warp as 12 black dreadnoughts unleashed their payload. The gravitic lances didn't fire beams or projectiles. They manipulated the fabric of reality itself. Vorac Bio ships that had torn through the Zapirian fleet like paper suddenly convulsed, their organic hulls twisting in impossible directions. Hive, Commander Shith's chitinous claws dug into his command throne as his flagship lurched violently. "What sorcery is this?" he screeched, his compound eyes reflecting the horror outside. An entire wing of his swarm simply collapsed inward, biological matter compressed into spheres, no larger than a human fist. The vacuum filled with the silent screams of dying Vorac warriors as their ships imploded by the dozens. On the Retribution's bridge, Captain Carter watched the carnage with grim satisfaction. "Adjust firing solution," he ordered. "Concentrate on their command clusters." The tactical officer's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "Aye, sir. Locking coordinates now." Below them, the remnants of the Zapirian fleet drifted in broken formations. Overlord Vex clutched the armrests of his floating command chair, his mechanical armor flickering with damage alerts. His remaining ships were retreating in panic, their plasma cannons useless against the Vorac's adaptive biology. Now he watched as the human vessels, the same ones he'd mocked days earlier, tore through the swarm like a scythe through wheat. "Admiral," his sensor officer stammered, "the human weapons, they're bypassing armor entirely. They're crushing the Vorac from the inside." Vex's mandibles clicked in disbelief. These were the same humans whose fleet schematics had been dismissed as primitive. The same species deemed unfit for war. His compound eyes reflected the flashes of dying Vorac ships as another volley of gravitic pulses ripped through the swarm's formation. On the surface of Zorath Prime, the remaining members of the Grand Conclave gathered around fractured holographic projectors. Ambassador Droth's scaled hands trembled as he watched the orbital display. "They're winning," he breathed. The other client species representatives exchanged stunned glances. Just hours ago, they'd been preparing surrender documents to the Vorac. Now their would-be conquerors were being systematically erased from existence. Back in the battle, Hive, Commander Shith's flagship, shuddered as another gravitic wave passed nearby. His organic control panels melted and reformed in nauseating waves. "Evasive maneuvers," he shrieked. "All ships scatter." But it was too late. The US and Vengeance had them locked. "Direct hit in 3, 2, 1. Riker's weapons officer announced. The Vengeance's primary lance discharged with a silent ripple of distorted space. Shith had just enough time to see his forward observation blister bulge inward impossibly, before the entire command deck collapsed into a singularity the size of a grapefruit. What remained of the Vorac flagship drifted silently, its outer hull intact, but every living thing inside reduced to paste. Carter watched the tactical display update in real time. "That is their command structure gone, Riker. Recommend we—" "Already on it," the Admiral interrupted. "All ships, switch to saturation pattern Delta. Clean up the stragglers." The Eclipse Fleet shifted formation with terrifying precision, their black hulls moving like shadows between the dying Vorac vessels. A Zapirian destroyer, the last breath of Zorath, found itself drifting near the Retribution's starboard flank. Its captain, a veteran of 50 campaigns, stared in awe at the human dreadnought through his fractured viewport. "By the first Hive," he whispered. "They're not just fighting them, they're exterminating them." On the Retribution's engineering deck, Dr. Hayes monitored the gravitic lance's power fluctuations. "We're at Fey capacity," she reported through gritted teeth. "These sustained firings are pushing the reactors harder than we tested." General Cole stood beside her, his scarred face illuminated by the pulsing blue core. "They'll hold," he said simply. "They were built for this." As if to prove his point, the Retribution unleashed another volley. 3 Vorac carriers attempting to regroup near Zorath's moon simply folded in half, their organic support structures snapping like dry twigs. The few surviving swarm ships had begun erratic jumps, some colliding in their panic to escape. Riker allowed himself a rare smile. "Comms, open a channel to the Zapirian remnants." When the connection crackled to life, his voice carried the weight of centuries of human determination. "This is Admiral Jacob Riker of the United Earth Space Navy. Your planet is secure. Suggest you gather your surviving ships and observe." Overlord Vex could only nod mutely from his damaged flagship. The holographic displays before him showed the final Vorac resistance being methodically erased. His entire worldview, the belief in Zapirian superiority, the dismissal of soft species, lay in ruins along with the swarm's fleet. On the surface, the client species ambassadors had begun a new kind of whispering, not the mocking tones they'd used for the human envoy days earlier, but the hushed, fearful voices of those who had just witnessed the birth of a new galactic power. The holographic banners of conquered species flickered uncertainly in the chamber's failing power, their once proud sigils suddenly seeming fragile. In the void above them, the Eclipse Fleet moved with terrible finality, their black hulls unmarred by battle, their weapons systems still humming with barely tapped potential. The last Vorac ship attempted a desperate jump to hyperspace, only to be caught mid-transition by a perfectly timed gravitic pulse. Space itself seemed to tear as the vessel was ripped apart across dimensions. Silence fell over the battlefield. The Zapirian survivors floated in stunned disbelief. The Vorac Swarm, the terror of 100 systems, had been reduced to drifting organic debris in less than an hour. And hovering above them all, darker than the void itself, the human dreadnoughts waited. The air inside the ruined conclave chamber tasted of ozone and burnt metal. Captain Elias Carter stepped over fallen Zapirian war banners, their holographic emblems sputtering weakly. His boots crunched on shattered obsidian as he approached the broken form of Admiral Vex. The once proud Overlord lay slumped against his fractured command throne. Biomechanical armor cracked open like an eggshell. Greenish blood seeped from his carapace where a structural beam had impaled him during the battle. Outside the shattered viewports, the black hulls of the Eclipse Fleet dominated the sky. The USN Retribution loomed largest among them, its gravitic lance ports still glowing faintly from the final volley that had torn the last Vorac hive ship apart. The battle had lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes to annihilate a swarm fleet that had crushed the mighty Zapirian Dominion in under an hour. "You're still alive," Carter observed, crouching beside the dying Overlord. His black uniform bore no insignia, no medals, just the simple silver star of Earth's United Systems Navy. Vex's mandibles twitched weakly. His voice came out as a wet rasp, the grinding metal tone gone. "Your ships, beautiful, aren't they?" Dr. Lisa Hayes stepped up beside Carter, a tablet displaying real-time damage assessments. 12 Eclipse-class dreadnoughts, cloaked, silent, waiting. She tapped the screen. The Vorac never saw us coming. Their organic sensors couldn't penetrate our stealth systems. A tremor ran through the chamber as another piece of orbital debris burned up in Zorath Prime's atmosphere. The distant wail of emergency sirens echoed through the broken city below. Vex's compound eyes flickered between the two humans. "Why help us?" Carter exchanged a glance with Hayes before answering. "We didn't. That swarm fleet was heading for Earth next." He tilted his head toward the viewport where the Retribution's massive silhouette blotted out the sun. This was always the plan. Hayes smirked, tapping her tablet. The holographic banners along the chamber walls, each representing a species conquered by the Zapirian Dominion, flickered erratically. One by one, their sigils dissolved and reformed into Earth's blue and white insignia. "You..." Vex coughed, more green fluid bubbling from his injuries. "You let us mock you at the conclave. Your pathetic schematics. Decoys," Hayes said cheerfully. "While you were laughing at our obsolete fleet designs, we were building these." She gestured upward at the Retribution. Gravitic lances, quantum cloaking, adaptive armor that makes your plasma cannons look like firecrackers. A new voice cut through the chamber's gloom. "Status report." Admiral Jake Riker strode through the debris, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly in the dim light. The bald commander didn't spare a glance for the dying Overlord. "Swarm forces eliminated," Carter reported. "Zapirian fleet remnants are surrendering across all orbitals." Riker nodded. "Vorac Hive, Commander Shith." "Pulse lanced at Fei ship time," Hayes said. "His flagship imploded with him inside. No survivors." The Admiral's mouth twitched in something almost resembling satisfaction. "Good. Sinclair wants the Eclipse Fleet positioned around Zorath Prime within the hour. Let's make sure everyone gets the message." Vex made a weak noise, one clawed hand twitching toward Carter. "Message." Riker finally looked down at the broken Overlord. His cybernetic eye whirred faintly as it focused. "That from now on, this galaxy has new rules." Carter reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data crystal. He pressed it into Vex's trembling claw. "Terms of surrender for what is left of your dominion." Vex's breathing grew more labored, his compound eyes dimmed as he stared up at the humans standing over him. "What are you?" Carter leaned down. close enough that his next words came out clear despite the distant thunder of collapsing buildings. The future. The Overlord's mandibles parted once more. Whether to curse or beg, no one would ever know. His body went rigid, then slumped against the throne as the last spark of life left him. Hayes exhaled sharply. Well, that is that. Riker turned toward the exit. Prep the comms array. Time to introduce ourselves to the rest of the Federation. As they walked from the ruined chamber, Carter glanced back one last time at the holographic banners. Every single one now bore Earth's insignia, glowing steadily against the smoke and ruin. Somewhere below, the first human peacekeeping forces were landing in the streets of Zorath Prime. Hayes nudged him with her elbow. "Penny for your thoughts, Captain?" Carter smiled as they stepped into the sunlight filtering through the broken dome. "Just thinking how quiet it is going to be from now on." Above them, the US and Retribution's massive engines flared to life, casting long shadows across the conquered city. The shadows of giants, the shadows of the future.